Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Deborah Chavez. I am one of the members of the board of directors here. I have the privilege of introducing our guest speaker today and did a little research and our guest speaker today is a nationally recognized expert in community safety and readiness, with an emphasis on shooting and violent encounters. He is a veteran of the U.S. Navy SEALs. Thank you for your service. We appreciate that. A CIA protective officer, and the list goes on and on. But what I felt from just doing some research is his heart is pure, and the reason this is so successful is because he is 110% dedicated to what he does. And thank you for being here, Jimmy. So without further ado, CEO of Able Shepherd Training, Jimmy Graham.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Good morning, everybody. I want to start my first slide. Let me get here. With as far as introductions, and can you guys see that and hear me okay? I call this my why slide, and I inserted this years ago, and this is actually an older picture. When I talk about security, a lot of times I'm training law enforcement or fire or business professionals that are in charge of other people's resources, meaning children, churches, businesses. In my business, I feel like I'm responsible for the people that work for me, including their safety. So when I throw up my why slide and I boil this down of one of my, and Jimmy Graham's thoughts of when I started this business 10 years ago, what was the purpose? Coming out of the SEAL teams and out of the CIA's protective program called GRS, Global Response Staff, it dawned on me that some of the skills that I've had and some of those amazing resources that have been invested in me, my community didn't have. I think a lot of times that macho guy comes out and says, somebody breaks into my house, I'm going to do such and such. It's like, well, you're not home. Like 7 months out of the year, you're not home, or maybe more, whether it be business or in my case, deploying overseas to defend the lives of others in different parts of the country. My family wasn't protected well. I've got people in my peer group that don't train civilians. They're like, you train civilians, as if they're looking down on it. And it dawned on me that I rely heavily on my community. My local community are the people that are going to protect these folks, meaning that my wife, this is Rachel, and from oldest to youngest, I have Rebecca, Sarah, Christian, and Eden, and I need my people to know how to handle themselves. And the motto of my business is take care of one another. Just simply take care of one another. For us, we mean that. That means when things are good, I'm leading motorcycle rides. It's the 10-year anniversary of the Benghazi attack on September 11th. This year marks the 10-year anniversary. I'm leading a motorcycle ride up to Big Fork, Montana, and we're going to be standing there. I'm going to be the guest speaker, a keynote speaker, and 16 people are coming with me to just stand there and honor the 4 people that we lost, because they get overshadowed, they get overlooked sometimes by the magnitude of September 11th. So that's the kind of, when things are good, that's the kind of things we're doing, is we're building community. Because I think a lot of times people think about being prepared or being ready, and next month is National Preparedness Month. We think about all that stuff and we forget that your greatest resource is people. Like if you don't have relationships and community, you're in a bad spot already. You're starting broken. So everybody has, I call this my why slide, and you have a why. You have a why of why you would inconvenience yourself to take time to make a security plan, why you would inconvenience yourself to walk around to the main entrance so you can have controlled entrance points. And I think that if you can build a safety culture, and we're heavy on safety culture because you can spend as much money as you want on the best door that the world has to offer. And if somebody props it open, you just negated everything. You violated a perimeter, and now the problem's on the inside. But a safety culture won't do that. A safety culture says it's my job to protect these kids. And if everybody says that, then that's a healthy place to start. So I remind everybody, the other thing is, obviously I just got back from Uvalde before I took off. I was down in Texas on another trip. And heard the plea for new, fresh answers, there's so much stuff out there. They're saying, what can be done? We started this 10 years ago, so we've learned a lot, so to go and remind officers, to remind individuals that are in the security field that these are human beings. Like I said, and this is a little bit rough, and I'm going to be blunt, and it's designed that way. Don't think gunshot, think dead kid. If you hear dead kid, they get your feet moving, or it should, and if you don't have the skills to be repeatable on that day, there's a problem and we need to address it. So not down there to what we call stump the chump or make anybody look bad or disrespect anybody, but there's a problem, something broke, and we need to look at fixing it. And those answers, from a background like Jason and I share, we've spent a lot of money, a lot of taxpayer dollars really getting to solutions, and they're out there, but we're just not sharing them well. So when I started this company, that's exactly what we started doing, is saying there's a void here. So yes, some of these things, some of these principles I may have learned in the SEAL teams. This is me and my daughter, who is now 14. It blows me away. Look at all that hair. I used to have hair. And like I said, she's 14 and soon to be 15. So it's been an amazing trip. But all of these things that I've been learning, and it's very much applicable today for any setting that I have. A little bit of, just my credibility wall, I call it, of just what this looks like globally. Top left is Kuwait. Below that is Kosovo. Center top is Baghdad. Top right is Kirkuk, Iraq. Bottom center is Lebanon, Beirut, Lebanon, and then Kabul, Afghanistan in the bottom right. What does this look like globally? Like as far as armed individuals, if they choose to be armed, we call them profiles. So these profiles very different. Some of them very overt. Look at, these are guys with guns, and then other ones. Bottom center in Beirut, Lebanon, I'm in a protective capacity, and I'm protecting people. I'm at a party, and we're just with individuals that work for the CIA, keeping them safe. Nearby, there's cars with machine guns in them and people ready to back me up. But that's what it looks like. Back here, it looks more like I'm dressed right now. Every day I have a podcast called Protector Culture Podcast with Jimmy Graham. And protector culture, I left it vague. It means if you are a protector, if you're that person that says, to get to them, you have to go through me, then I would consider you a protector. And then different capabilities of protectors, my profile would look like this. I may be armed, I may not. But there's certain things that I've thought about. A lot of us in the security industry are what if people. We constantly think, what if? What if this happened? What if that happened? And it's not out of fear. It's out of strength. And in my case, out of faith. I'm like, no, it's my job. I'm called to do that. And I'm my best when I'm living out my calling of a protector. Next slide. In Tripoli, Libya in 2012, and I'm building up to how we got started with the foundation that we work with now. This is the team, the GRS, our Global Response Staff team in Libya in 2012, before the attack that the world kind of knows is 13 hours. Down in the center low, that's me on the right. A guy named Glenn Doherty on the left, and that's the SEAL that lost his life. After the call came out, he was in Libya. They acquired a plane. He took a team to rescue them and went to check in with a fellow SEAL on the rooftop when those mortars came in and took both their lives. So one of the guys that we'll be honoring next month. Again, 10-year anniversary. The guy up in the upper left in the orange shirt, call sign Wyatt. Gentlemen, if anybody's seen a movie called Zero Dark 30, there was a scene with a suicide bomber that was allowed to come into the base. Everybody in the GRS team said, this is not a good idea. We don't want to do this. You're breaking protocol. But the powers that be demanded we not insult this person because they were going to lead us to Osama bin Laden, and then obviously detonated himself. This gentleman was injured and crawled around using tourniquets and saving lives, and got a medal, that the world will never hear about. And then we lost him a couple of years ago to just in training at a heart attack. So these are proven principles globally. Obviously not to the same capability of a group like this, but the principles are sound. Meaning the principles can be applied over a school. They can be applied over a church. They can be applied over your home. So once you understand certain principles of how this works, you can modify them and scale them to any facility. And once you invest in your individuals, we always start. That's what they will shepherd. We talk about investing in your people first. Everybody wants to buy a gadget. They want to buy a thing. They want to have an acronym or an acrostic. You need to invest in your people first. And when you invest in your people, that's an investment that goes home with them, because now they're going to be safer in the parking lot with their child on the weekend because you invested in them. They're going to be safer as a community on Monday morning because you invested in them. So it is something that sticks with them and may potentially save their life on and off the clock. License. So when I left, I was the team lead in Benghazi, Libya, 3 weeks prior to that attack. So I had turned over on a scheduled rotation, was back in Tripoli for a week, was back in DC for a week, and then I was in Castle Rock, Colorado, and got a text that said, "Have you seen the news?" So if you're familiar with that attack that happened in the movie 13 Hours, this is those individuals, everybody there on that base When I left, I was the team lead. My call sign's Jefe. So if you see somewhere like, what does that mean? Is it Jeff? Jefe means chief or boss. I was a chief in the SEAL teams. People like Oz upper left says Colorado Oz because I just moved to Colorado. TIG right under the crescent moon is John Tigan, who speaks locally here in Colorado quite a bit, travels nationally. And then the bottom left is a Roan 3.0 TD. That means 3-liter turbo diesel, because we're both kind of gearheads and four-wheel drive enthusiasts. And Toyota makes an amazing engine that's not allowed in the United States. So on our last move together, we talked about that all night while we were in a protective detail. We were talking about Toyota engines, and he wrote that when I departed. So obviously that means a lot to me now in light of what happened. Made a move about 13 hours. I think they did a good job, and I think that story needed to be told. This is the FAST team, fleet. That's the Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Team that showed up after the attack in Tripoli. In 2012, we had, prior to that attack, my wife and I had started a company called Duty to Act LLC. We had seen the gap as I was looking to transition out of that lifestyle. I tell people this way: I've had two of the greatest jobs in the world for a single guy with no kids. That's the SEAL teams and deploying with the CIA. Once you get married and have children, it kind of loses its luster. I'm the most patriotic guy you'll ever meet, and I appreciate what they're doing because I know, there's buddies that Jason and I have that don't get to live this life, right? So I feel called to do better and live more and push harder. But that wasn't my role anymore. So when we started this, I've heard it said that you can run a business and raise a family. So I'm trying to prove that. Like I said, I'm 10 years in and I'm getting closer, the work-life balance. But I saw a gap in the security industry. Like I said, that these principles exist, but we don't share well. Like things that Jason and I have learned, they haven't trickled down effectively to protect our schools. And I don't understand that. And I don't like it, right? So it became my mission to say, if there's a better way to do it, then I owe it to these people. And I'm constantly learning. I said, when we stop learning, we become dangerous. So that means if I know a better way to do this, I must teach it. I think it was Jordan Peterson recently. I read a quote and he says, when you have something to say, silence is a lie. So if you've got an answer inside you and you see Uvalde, I take it personal. I take it personal that I'm not working hard enough. When I got that text, I looked at my staff and I go, we need to work harder, right? Because this thing is going to happen again. And I don't like that. And as you see, I have school-age children and I have skin in the game. So I'm not talking from the outside looking in. I'm a dad. So people talking to me as if I'm not a parent, it ticks me off, and two, it fuels me. So we're working hard to supply not just another perspective, but solutions, effective solutions. And I'm a big advocate. You'll hear me say this 50 times if we have this conversation. Show me. You must be able to show me. Anywhere I've ever worked, they could pull you offline and test you right then, and you could present a solution. And I know there's another acronyms and other training solutions, and we assess them. And we don't do it to embarrass them. We say, can we put you in this scenario and can you show us? And we just assessed one here locally and it failed miserably. And I'm like, that's not okay. Not in a space to make them look bad, in a space to help them and say that this must be repeatable. And if it's not repeatable on the best day, it'll never be successful on the worst day. So in this picture, and I don't know how to point it out, but to the left, two heads over from me, is Mark Geist. So that's Oz that had just been recently released from the hospital after Benghazi. And he's got about 3 miracles in his body where if it had been an inch this way or that way, he wouldn't be with us anymore. So he came up from the Springs to support our launch of Duty to Act back in the business started in 2012, but 2013 was when we launched that building. All right, just want to start off talking with concentric rings of security. So concentric rings of security, that just means rings or circles that share the same center. It means where are we going to place the center and what are we protecting? If this was a person, like in my role overseas, that person would be in the center of that, and we'd have layered, circles going outboard. So maybe that outer perimeter might be somebody looking, is there anybody heading our way? Binoculars, cameras, all that kind of thing. And then they should hit layers, some kind of layer to let us know, hey, this is getting worse. Why? To let us assume a posture. Meaning this, let's just take it and put it over your home. Over your home, I say if my wife is cooking spaghetti and she hears a loud kick and she looks up and somebody's standing in our living room, it means the perimeter didn't work. That front door was not solid enough to allow her to assume a posture. So I show this in some of my presentations is if you go and look at home invasions, a good kick to your front door will send it into the room. Why? Because if you've ever installed a new doorknob, the screws that hold on your hardware are about that long. They're tiny. They're about a half inch. They're very, very small, and they're biting into the trim work. So that's on the hinge side and on the bolt side. So there's just not a lot of material stopping you. So we recommend that everybody, one at a time, take out a screw and put in a 2.5 to 3 inch deck screw. And if you do that on both sides, you can kick that door as hard as you want and the entire wall will flex, right? It means that it may give in eventually, but now you had ample time to assume a posture. When that door finally gives, my wife should be standing in front of my children with a pistol. That's about as blunt as I can put it. It means she had time to assume a posture. So you can place those concentric ring concept over anything, over your school, or your church. Now, the hardest one is churches. Why is that? Because we don't have perimeters. We come one, come all, come as you are. And that's the way it should be. And that's where a lot of prayer and a lot of faith come in, but we can still provide some kind of solution. We just can't have perimeters. A lot of pastors aren't going to allow, they might allow a person to sit there, but he's not really effective enough to stop somebody who's bum rushing the stage. You're more reactionary than you are restrictive. So we just need to make sure that we understand that. And that is an acceptable risk in a church. You must do it. You don't want to look like a prison. You don't want to scare people out of there. You want them to come. But it is the toughest. It's the most difficult. You can have a perimeter in a school, you can have one in your home, and you can have one in your business. Obviously, varying on the business, the entryway may be common, but it's not common for you to have access to my people. So that's kind of where we can always go back to and say, where are those imaginary rings, and how can, obviously, if somebody was coming toward an embassy, I want to know down the block that there's a big truck moving this direction. So that first ring is way, way out there, and it's a camera, followed by a fence, followed by a gate, followed by people with guns, followed by a good solid wall on the embassy. So that's what that would look like if you put them in those different scenarios. When we start talking about the planning, we have a foundation that we've created that's called the USA standard, and it means uniform, safe, and accurate. So uniform, safe, and accurate means uniform is everybody's got to be on the same page. Often I'll walk into a facility and they'll say, where do you want to start? And I go, can I talk to your receptionist? And I go, yeah. I go, ma'am, if you heard gunshots, what would you do? And she goes, I don't know. I go, that's where we start, because we're not uniform. We don't even have a plan. She doesn't have an answer, and it doesn't have to be the perfect answer, but they should all be the same answer, right? They should have an idea of what to do. Safe is some of these plans that I've seen are simply unsafe. I evaluate SWAT teams, and I was just out, I won't mention the name, but it was out in a county that's out in the mountains here. It's a very affluent town, and assessed the SEAL team, the SWAT team, and it was unsafe. I was like, nobody does that anymore. I understand what you're doing because I saw it 15 years ago, but that's very unsafe. We've proven that to not to be a good tactic. So these things I've heard of people hurting people in training. Law enforcement run active shooter training. They put somebody through a plate glass window, or they accidentally shoot a woman who was helping because they didn't check if the guns were not loaded. So that's just not safe. It's just, it was broken from the word go. And then accurate. Accurate can mean correct, meaning is it the ample, like there's a term, and not industry standard. Anyways, best practices, the best practices. That's, you be careful with that term. When people that don't know what they're talking about say best practices, that can be actually dangerous and misleading. So is it accurate? And then when we're talking about firearms on an armed staff, it means, can you hit anything? Under stress for time, you need to be able to show me. It means their boss should be able to pluck you out and say, I've got a test for you, go. And you should pass it. And if you can't, you shouldn't be carrying a gun. And I know that's a little bit harsh because people don't like pulling people off teams. That's just the reality. And also, it needs to be repeatable. Our bodies change. I realize that I need these things because my shooting told me. I'm like, why can't I see that as crisp anymore? Why are my rounds going to the left? Because my body changed. And without recurring training, I would not have known that. I would have not have been the capability that my boss paid for because I didn't know. Right. But then when you do a recurring training, I have to recertify my own company, and I have to recertify every 6 months. And every 6 months, I have to go prove it. And then I got glasses, I came back to the center, and I go, problem there. We addressed it, and we're back to good. Then we get to the defend training model. I understand there are many out there. There's Alert, there's Alice, Run, Hide, Fight. There's all of these others. So I'm going to add yet another, right? And I'm not poo-pooing those. I'm just saying in certain ones, for example, Alice says we are absolutely not talking about fighting. Do not fight. I'm like, that's unfair. That's not realistic. If I need you to be successful, we have a young hero here locally named Kendrick Castillo that we honor regularly. I know his dad, he's a friend of our program, and he gave his life saving his schoolmates. He jumped up and tackled somebody with a gun. The gun went off and he got one in the chest, but he saved countless classmates, right? So I'm not ready to throw fight out of there. The problem with run, hide, fight, one, it's chronological. Run, then hide, then fight. Run. If you can't run, hide. If you can't run or hide, then fight, last resort. may not be your last resort. It may be your first resort. It may be the first thing you have to do, not because you want to, because you have to, right? So you don't get to pick in an emergency because emergencies don't happen chronologically. So we need to understand that. And we need to know that if you're going to say run, hide, fight, you need to teach run, then hide, then fight. Because if you teach hide, I've been in a business before where I pulled up to the parking lot and I could see through the glass building to the other parking lot on the other side of the building because all offices were glass. And their plan was they were going to hide. They're going to hide 80 people in glass offices. And I said, do you think that's realistic? And she goes, I go, show me. And she was a good sport. She was in a business attire. She was in a dress. She got on her knees and she crawled behind her desk. And I was like, I can see your feet. And it was comical, but it really wasn't. It means that's a horrible plan. Hide comes out of your plan. Due to your building, you don't get a hide, period. And most people, if they have 300 employees, there's not 300 hiding spots. But when you're scared, you'll hide under a table with no tablecloth because I'm scared, right? And we've seen in some of these shootings how that works out. You're not hiding. My kids will tell you that's not a good hiding spot, and then it costs you your life, but you're scared. So if you go through those phases, it's going to show you that plan a little bit better. So when we came up with the defend training modules, it's just DEFEND. It's an acrostic. The first thing that we put across the top is the situation will dictate the order of these modules. The situation. It means you don't get to pick what order. You need to know the tools to be successful, and this is what people don't want to hear. It's on you to save your own life. And it's like, well, it's the boss's fault because he didn't do a thing. No, it's only the shooter's fault. When people say Uvalde, it's the cop's fault. It's not their fault. Could they have prevented some things? Yes, that's a true statement. It's not their fault. It's only the shooter's fault. This word liability is killing us. It's absolutely killing us. So we need to make sure that we understand it is every adult's job to protect children to the best of their ability. It's not their fault when they get hurt. It's the shooter's fault. So once we clarify that, we can actually free us up to actually do something and not be scared. So the defend training modules means defense, evacuate, fortify, emergency medical aid, notify others in your immediate area, and then dial 911. Again, I want to emphasize they're not in order. You may have to fortify and lock that door. Some might call it lockdown because you don't have a choice. They're coming. You got kids in here and those kids are little and they can't move. You got to lock the door. But if you lock the door, it should be lockable. A lot of these schools have a chunk of glass in the door. Two primary reasons why that glass is there. One, you can look in and make sure there's no shenanigans, there's teaching going on, there's no abuse, anything like that, as you just walk down the hall. The other thing is when you open the door, you don't slam little Billy in his face. You see him standing there and you open the door gently. The problem is if you bust that glass, you can reach around and unlock the door. That means it's not fortifiable. So you can't call that lockdown when you're not locked down. I think it was the STEM shooting here in Colorado where you see the police clearing the school afterwards and they bust out that window, reach around and unlock the door. That example right there shows you that's not a secure door. In 5 seconds, that police officer was in that room, so the shooter could be as well. So we need to rethink that. And there is technology out there. Some of it's hardware, and it's very easy to install. But if you can reach that, let's go back to your home. If you've got a sliver of glass so you can see the Amazon delivery guy, that could be a problem. Because if you break that glass, I can reach your deadbolt. Now, you lock the door and you sleep soundly at night because the door's locked, but it's not secure. In 5 seconds, somebody could be standing inside your home. So those are things you need to think about. And for fire code reasons, if you've ever been overseas, you might see somebody that locks their deadbolt, pulls a key out from the inside and puts it in their change basket or whatever. That's where it hangs by the door. That's for that reason. So you can't reach in and grab it, but it's against fire code in the States. So this thing was made to help us can actually hurt us if you have the wrong door. So those are things that you can do. Perhaps you build something a little more robust there and put a camera outside. Now you can see outside. I know it's like natural light and all that stuff. We just need to redesign. We can get natural light from up high and make sure somebody can't reach that deadbolt latch if they did break that glass, which would be very easy. So back up top to defense. So on defense can be everything from, do you know how to lean forward, get your arms up 45 degrees so you don't get punched in the face? You know, maybe it's an abusive student. Maybe it's somebody that walks in that's not, it's healthy mentally, and they punch out your receptionist. There's certain physical defense things that are very easy that we used to teach people going overseas to deploy just in high risk or critical situations all over the world. So it could be personal self-defense, but defense also means that SWAT team that's coming to the door, the armed security professional. That whole section of defense is very broad. Quite frankly, it's the most effective. This is one of the oldest principles as far as protection in the world. Then it's very effective. To get to them, you have to go through me. To get to them, you have to go through me. If that's easy, like in Sandy Hook, a principal was a hero. She stood there and said, stay out. She just didn't have the capability. She had the heart, but she didn't have the capability. So she was shot and he stepped over her and shot a bunch of little kids multiple times, right? So to have a capability to say to get to them, you have to go through me, says that's going to be difficult. And now we're just getting real. We're just saying, if you walk right through me, you can do whatever you want. We call it winner take all. So when I teach the ladies classes, I'm not picking on ladies or anything. I'm just saying a lot of times my wife and other ladies, they're like, I'm fine. I don't really need this. And then you mention their kids and like, do not touch my kids. We call it mama bear. They're like, this is a done deal. I'm drawing a line in the sand here, right? But what it means is winner take all. If you defeat me, you get my kids. And now a switch flips. And they're like, okay, let's talk about this. Let's figure out what we can do to make it realistic. Next, we have evacuate. On evacuate, we say it this way. If you tell them, if you show them, they remember. If you tell them, they forget. Meaning take a group of kids, walk them down the street and show them where they're going to go in an emergency. For my kids' school, I've done this personally, developed both relationships to a company down the street, set a date, my staff shows up, walks them down the street, introduces them, and they go to the warehouse and they sit down. Then they stand up and then they go back, right? Throughout the year for exercise, they do the same thing. But if there was an emergency and you said, we must leave this building, they know exactly where they're going. Why? Because we showed them. Show them a primary route, a secondary route. Primary route, fastest route. There's a gas leak and there's no evil person hunting children. Take the fastest route. Just line them up. Line 200 kids on the street and walk down the street. But if there is that evil kind of thing that's hunting children, don't line them up on the street. Because if they have a vehicle, we've seen how that plays out. So take the harder route. Take the hill and dale and through the trees and back over the woods, but end up at the same location. So one takes a little longer, but it's safer from those vehicles. Another one's more direct. If it is some kind of natural thing where there's nobody trying to hurt them, just go fast. Here in Colorado, we may have to I've been in one church comes to mind where they had a sign that says Rally Point. In the parking lot, sign says Rally Point. We're going to meet out there. I go, so if there's a shooter you're going to meet there? They go, yeah, we need to consolidate everybody there. I'm like, could you shoot that sign? They're like, yeah, I think I could hit it. That's a bad spot, right? What if it's a gas leak? They go, yeah, we're still meeting at the same spot. So I pull up a video of a gas explosion. They go, we're not meeting there anymore because it takes out half the block. We're like, we need to get further away, preferably with some kind of barrier in between and make that the spot. So yes, a little more walking. And the reason why you need an off-site location where you can go indoors is because we live in Colorado. We just took, if we had to yank all these kids out of school and they didn't have time to grab their coats because it's emergency and it's 5 below, you have another emergency. It's also life and death, but you're not about to freeze kids to death, right? So we need to have a plan. The plan needs to happen before the event. As far as reunification, that's what's going to happen afterwards. When I was just down in Texas, we did a drill, and this is an open forum workshop drill. And I said, I want everybody to line up right here. We're at the event center in Floresville. And we lined everybody up. And I said, I want tables across here. I want 4 people sitting in these chairs, right? I want a police officer holding the gate to hold all the parents back. I want everybody else. I got hundreds of people on the other side. And I said, you're the parents. You just lost children. There's a shooting in your school and you don't know what's going on, but you said that you were told to come here. Behind the 4 people were 8 others, 2 per seated person. The parents had to walk over, read a name, and they had to look at their sheet. And something very nondescriptive on the sheet, they had to look at it and say, okay, Mr. Johnson, could you please go with Cindy? And Cindy's going to walk over, tell the officer to let that parent through. Some of those parents are turning left, and they're going to go meet with a pastor or a counselor because their child's not with us anymore. The other people are going to go reunify with their kid behind them. They're going to lead through the back because what this person doesn't need to see is a celebration saying, thank you, Jesus, for saving my child, right? So we need to make sure that this plan is built before day of. And it's hard stuff. There were tears. People were crying because this just happened in a town over, right? So this is just horrible stuff, but it's part of it. So that the evacuation and reunification plans, man, you don't want to be trying to call pastors and counselors the day of. You need to build that team right now and say, if you're watching the news and you see something bad, you need to show up at the event center, right? And I need somebody to take charge and put this together because I'm going to be busy. And when you're ready, just tap me on the shoulder and say, we're ready for you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that. But we've got it. It's a team effort. It needs to be shared. It gives them that dignity as well to be a part of the solution. We talked about fortify a little bit of just saying, is this hard to get in? Having a common place of entrance and exit to make sure that it's hard for people that aren't supposed to be there. There's 2 schools of thought in this. It's if you're familiar with CPTED, which stands for Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design, and then Target Hardening. So I don't think either one of them had the answer. One looks like a prison. The other one, they try to make the building so nice that people act better. And I just don't think that's correct with rational. They say it's for rational thinking people. They want more glass, more eyeballs, more all that stuff, but it just means people will act better if they're in a better environment. And there's truth to some of the CPTED principles, but when it goes bad, like it did in Uvalde, they don't care what the building looks like. They had an agenda when they pulled up. So the SEPTA principles, I don't think would hold true. I think the answer is in between, and I'll show a model here in just a second. Emergency medical aid, primarily that's bleeding control. If you've heard of the Stop the Bleed initiative, it's a national initiative, and I would add chest seals. So it's tourniquets, wound packing, and chest seals. This is a 2-hour class with scenarios. If you don't do scenarios, about 1 hour, but I'd recommend scenarios. It's just doing it. Remember, everybody in this equation in an emergency has a job. Everybody has responsibilities, every single person, including the children. So even the children, if their job is to be quiet, get down and do all that, they need to be trained to do so, at least practice. And it doesn't have to be scary. I would start with not calling it an active killer drill, active shooter drill. Those are just scary in words. Name it something else. And people say, what if my kids are traumatized by the drill? I say, then do it more. The reason they're traumatized, because you do it once a year and you call it active killer. They think somebody's trying to kill them, right? So do more of it. I do this with my children. I've got these videos. The old school put a blindfold on and hit the fire thing, and then they all got to crawl out of the house. It's hilarious, but it shows that there's problems with the plan, right? My daughter crawled back into the house to go out the garage because let's get out the front door. To her, the front door means the door we always use, which is the garage. But the drill showed us that was the wrong plan. It was my fault, by the way. It wasn't her fault, my fault. Right? She's never messed it up since. And we have fun with it. And it's funny, and they're bumping into the walls and all that kind of stuff. And they're helping their little sister, all that stuff. But the drill showed us that. I've been in another local town here in the mountains where they said, we're going to pull the fire alarm because with fire comes police. So if there's a problem, pull the fire alarm. I go, do it. They're like, do what? I'm like, pull the fire alarm. I call 911. I could call dispatch right now. Can we call? Yeah, we're good. All the cops and firefighters are outside. So let's go ahead and do the drill. And as soon as they pulled the fire alarm, all the brand new magnetic lock doors and locked the police out. So they were locked out and couldn't get in. So that bought just minutes. And then the Knox box key was on a ladder and it was front of glass, just the baddest stuff. But the drill showed us this is a bad idea. Just doing it and messing up, just like anything else in life. Do it, mess up, take some data down, then do it better the next time. And if you do that enough, you become quite good at this. Notify others in your immediate area. I mean, some of these campuses and businesses are so big, you could go full auto with a machine gun in one room and people, one building over or several hallways down, they don't even hear it. You think I'd hear the gunshots? Not necessarily. A couple closed doors, couple whatever. You're in danger, but you don't know it. So people on the property need to know that they need to get out of here. Because if that we call it hot zones, cold zones, warm zones. I know it's taught a little bit differently in some venues. I teach it this way. The hot zone's where the bad guy is. So you could be stationary and enter the hot zone. Why? Because the guy walked in the room. Right? Warm zone will be everything that hasn't been cleared, and cold zones are areas that have been cleared and then protected. People forget that. So if it's cleared and then you leave to go clear the thing, it's no longer cold because we couldn't protect it. Now, if you got a ton of police officers, you leave police officers to protect it, it stays cold. And now you can move kids into there. We have to practice that way and understand that. So to notify others in your immediate area and to dial 911. A lot of times people say, we got here in Castle Rock. It's an amazing community. We got great law enforcement. They boast a 3-minute response time. Well, if nobody calls for 10 minutes because they're busy saving their own life and others, then it's a 13-minute response time. These things don't last 13 minutes, right? It's what can be done in 13 minutes is horrific. So that clock doesn't start until they're notified, right? And on the best day, it's 3 minutes. If there's anything else going on, it will not be 3 minutes. In 2020, we called 911 and they were done. I got nobody to send you. Right? What does that tell us? It tells us it's always been your responsibility to save your own life, right? Went to the Supreme Court out of Castle Rock and they proved it is not the police's job to protect you. It's not. It's their job to protect this community to the best of their ability. And if there's 7 officers on duty and there's 7 needs, you don't get a cop. That's just the reality. My kids at the time, private Christian school with only 100 kids, they're not getting a police officer, period. It's 100% on them. So to say we only have to hold out, we have a big Christian high school that we do the security for, the training for, and their old security director would say, I just got to hold out for 3 minutes. I go, that's a bad plan. A healthy place to start is if the police don't show up, we've got a plan. And if they do show up, it gets better. And then we have to do a responsible turnover to make sure there's not a blue on blue and we don't hurt each other. So that's a healthy place to start. Is we have a plan without police, and when they show up, it gets better. Then we have a phase schedule saying, how do you responsibly train people to handle firearms? This is firearm specific. I won't go into that, but it just means basically we all start in the same spot. We have the same tests. If you pass the test, you earned that responsibility. And if you don't, you simply don't. Some people are just the wrong people for the job, and they have to prove it. And it's not just standing there shooting at paper. Throughout my experience, it's been entries, it's been postures, it's been, can you use a flashlight? Can you shoot and move? Can you conceal draw? Basic movement. All of these things must be done, where you see the protector in the center of the screen, protector pistol test. The national standard we've created for anyone with a pistol is that protector certified. If you don't have a certificate that says protector certified, in my opinion, if you don't know those skills, rather, you shouldn't be having a firearm. If you don't know how to protect your head, keep yourself from getting knocked out and somebody taking your gun, you shouldn't pick up a gun, right? So there's certain things that go along with this, and it's very doable for pretty much everybody. We have most of the people in our program are not law enforcement, and they were never military, and they're doing amazing things. Quickly, I'll go over this concept that I drew up on a napkin that I went to an architect and he sketched it. And now we have walkthroughs. And this is just, again, something to just plant a seed of what schools will look like in the future. And if you look at it, if you've ever been overseas to Europe, you've seen this before. Courtyards are not a new thing. They're a very old thing. And the design of a courtyard was for life to continue as normal because there's dangerous stuff outside the walls. I hear people, I don't want it to look like a prison. Like, I don't want it covered in blood, right? Yes, aesthetics is a thing. But if you've ever been to an embassy, they're gorgeous. They're beautiful. People are safe inside because of the walls. They don't feel trapped. It's awesome. It's a city park on the inside, and the kids are playing, and bypassers would never see children, period. So I think this is a healthy way. On this, if you look at the big building, that's the school. If you look at everything else, those are actually private businesses. So I want to build one of these in Castle Rock, and we're heading that direction where people are paying leases, but it's their responsibility, their shared earned responsibility through a covenant agreement to respond to that school. It gives every one of these schools a 30-second response time on any given school day, because people like me are at work in the same building, but we're just segregated from the school. I would not have access to the school. I would not have access to the courtyard until there's an emergency. Then I would respond within 30 seconds and be on site. So it just means, again, the bigger building is the school, everything else is a private business, and there's secure corridors that would allow me to get in the school, but I would have an agreement to not be in the school at all unless they needed me. Now the local community and business owners do share a responsibility, not just an active shooter, but any responsibility to help out the school's needs and protect children. This is just showing like a RAM mitigation type embassy door, because you are going to need to maintain the landscape. You're going to need to do all this stuff, but there shouldn't be any workers there while children are present. What happened in the evening and on the weekends, and then during the summer break, just showing that this can be used as a running track for kids. They can be playing on the paved or asphalt area. I am having them add more trees and picnic areas, and there could be outdoor classes. They can do sporting events and all that stuff, but there would be murals and things like that on the walls so they don't look so sterile. What it means is that your building is doing most of your work. The perimeter is done already through architecture. So letting that happen, there's alarms, there's a perimeter, there's response times, all that built in. This next slide shows internally, if I'm at work and then a light goes off in the ceiling, I start heading towards that school. Right now I'm behind the businesses, much like a mall where they take out the trash. I don't have any business inside your building, inside of your space, but now I'm running through a secure corridor to respond to your school in 30 seconds. And if I got somebody in my earbud that through the app shows up and starts telling me, the director of security for the school is telling me where the shooter is because he sees him on a camera. I know not to waste time on the first floor because he's not on the first floor. Jimmy, I see you. You're going. He's on the second floor. He's in room 205. I'm not messing around downstairs. I'm going to room 205 with a gun in my hand, and don't hand me a floor plan. Don't hand me a map. Tell me what to do because I'm not slowing down. And within seconds, I'm going to enter that room and we're going to neutralize the threat. So again, neutralizing the threat, there's a problem and a solution. The problem, somebody's hurting kids. The solution is make them stop. So we're going to get there as efficiently and effectively as possible. And on the way, I'm joined by other people that are trained to the same standard, and there's no time for a training class. The call's on me. We're going upstairs and you're coming with me. And we've practiced this 1,000 times, and we're going to respond whether the police show up or not. So that's what we've presented. Pretty much when I was at the Western Conservative Summit this year speaking, this is what I presented to the nation, saying we can do better. There's the answers out there. I'm going to stop share. And we'll go to questions. And I know, I'm sorry, I so much information. I want to blast it out there and I want to open it up for questions. But I really do believe that. I believe that when you, to top all this off, the two words that need to pop into your head on any of this ride all the way along is show me. If you can't prove it, that conversation's over. We can do better. The principles are there. The technology's there. I think in some cases, the money's there. All the things are there, and we can do better than this. School's starting again, and everybody was on fire during Uvalde saying all the stuff they were doing. I don't know how many contracts we got open right now of things they were going to do during the summer, but it's vacation time, right? And now I just got to hit up for an op-ed. So I'll be writing an op-ed for the Centennial Institute talking about back to school. Security's on everybody's mind. What are we doing about it? So I want to finish with this. People saying guys like me are trying to capitalize on tragedy. Right? I never stop talking about this. People stop listening, right? So all day, every day, this is what I do other than Sunday. Me and my team work hard on this all the time, but we've only got people's ear for a limited time. And that's when there's kids lying on the floor. And that's unfortunate. So we're going to continue to work hard and present this stuff. And please share anything and everything that I presented to you. Use it. We give it to police. We give it to everybody because our objective is safer children. Questions?
This is Pat Dyer, president of our whatever role I play at FMA. But I just want to say thank you for the presentation. What a wealth of knowledge, and really did a tremendous job of really breaking this down. We have other members from my team on the call. I know that PMS operates Head Starts throughout the state of New Mexico. And like other organizations and entities statewide, nationwide, we're always looking for resources to assist us with securing our clients, which is basically our kids. So it's always important. But we also dive off into what do we do for our facilities in the healthcare industry as well, because we serve both houses, right? We have Head Starts and we also have medical facilities. And so from a medical facility standpoint, that is always tough because we're always open 24-hour triages and so on and so forth, right? and so, we always have to take a look at that aspect of security as well. And with the improved technology of having cameras and improving staff overall knowledge on how to handle these type of incidents is really, really important for us. The one question that I would have, I work on the construction side of the house in regards to the build out of our facilities. How involved are you with in the construction industry in terms of working with developments and architects in design? I know you shared a little bit about how those schools are designed overseas, but what about the medical industry in terms of hospitals, clinics? How involved are you with that?
Not as much with the medical industry. We do have had a hand in training security personnel in the medical industry. We share a facility for HSS, is a hospital security guard company that co-leases with us. But with the schools, we're getting more and more involved in the construction side, meaning that I've seen different companies that try to build a safer school into that. Like not so much the perimeter because that's a sound idea, but within and putting little cubbies and shooting spots and all that stuff. I don't put a lot of credence in that because it works both ways. The shooter now can hide behind that too. You designed it for police, but the shooter can use it, right? So we say it this way. Technology exists to make a human response more effective. Like technology exists to make human beings more effective. If you don't have trained human beings, you start broken. You can have cameras and they're going to record who died. That's a true story. They can even help us see what went wrong so later we can do better, but it's not helping those kids, not on that day. It's going to record who died and how they died, right? So to have what we call physical stops, you can insert those through construction. Steel door is a physical stop. But as I mentioned, it can work both ways. If it locks out, the shooter can lock out the police. So now you delayed your response. So we're working with fire to work on fire code to say, I get it. Most of the stuff you're doing to save lives might actually cause loss of life. So that is going to be that conversation that happens between target hardening and CPTED. They must come together because the answer's in the middle. Some of these construction companies build prisons and they build schools. They're trying to make their prisons look more accommodating. They're trying to make their schools harder. So the answer's in the middle and they're heading in a direction. We just need it to happen faster.
So one of the things that we've been taking a look at internally is our sightline vision. As you know, a lot of schools are developed, especially in New Mexico. They have an open kind of design platform. We want to be welcoming to the community. It's almost like the schools are designed to be built in or to our community, or we function out of, a lot of our sites function out of having portable facilities, modular buildings in kind of, in either rural communities and or in a setting where it's welcoming to the public, where access is granted kind of right off of the main road. So like you said, I think it's a two-headed sword. How do you think, or what recommendations would you have in terms of securing those type of facilities? One of the things that we take a look at is sightline vision. So putting the barriers up with fencing, with maybe some slats to be able to restrict vision on to what an active shooter or potential threat would be able to see. Dovetailing from the exterior into the facility, we're taking a close look at making sure that we have appropriate window coverings. So as we do recognize a potential threat, we can get our kids into the facility without them being seen visibly from the outside of the facility, right? Yeah. As you know as well, though, right, a lot of the threats that we've been having actually have already passed that additional security barrier and are already in the school. And so it's kind of a tricky thing, but what are your recommendations in terms of those?
As far as the sightline stuff, I look for the worst case scenarios and then back out of there, right? So when the thing goes down, so for example, CEPTED, one of the things I disagree with CEPTED, for more visibility, if you feel like you have more eyes on you, you're going to act right? So let's take out all the brick and put in glass, right? Well, that day when it goes bad, you're going to crawl in a hole and pretend you didn't put in glass, right? But everybody's going to know that used to be brick, and brick you wouldn't have been able to step through, right? So that's the kind of thing where it's like we have to enter this space where we say, I know it's very unlikely this happens, but if it does, am I going to stand by my decisions, right? And that's how I have to really run my business and live my life. I stand by everything I said the day of the shooting. I'm still standing there saying, hey, this, I still think this is the answer, right? So when this is going to happen again, right? And it's not going to be somebody's fault because they did or didn't, because we're going to do the best we can with what we've got, but it's got to be realistic. That's where it comes into show me, show me. So if you put in more fencing and take out a wall, I know walls aren't very warm, but again, to some of these places around the world or even within the States, because some schools are built like this, we can get creative with landscaping. The landscaping can be gorgeous and it looks like a little stream, but what's it really doing? It's designed at angles that will plant a charging vehicle into the earth, right? That comes from military doctrine of just how do you build these angles for high speed mitigation. If you go through the cheapest fence you got and a guy blasts through with a van, you're going to say, did we have a fence? Well, the answer was yes, we had a fence. It just wasn't an effective fence, right? So that's where it's like, did it work? Again, technology, it exists to make human beings more effective. If we can delay the time, delay access to this person with physical stops, being the person that's ill-willed that comes in, we slowed them down that save lives until humans could get there, or we kept them out, or we deterred them and all that stuff. So yes, I get the welcoming things, but in schools, I think the future of schools, they won't be welcoming. There won't be come one, come all. We want the community in. It's like, no, stay out of here unless you got business here. That's how I know when my kids are going to school right now, that's exactly what I want. And, I want to walk Johnny to class. We don't do that here. It's like, okay, you say goodbye at the front door and you'll get them back. And if you're going to come on the property, and people appreciate it now, that is the question right now at the beginning of the school year. What are you doing to protect my children? And even like a man trap, I'm a very big advocate of man traps. You've heard of them called Sally ports or vestibules. It means Rachel Graham, my wife, if she gets buzzed in and she comes in, she's in a little room, the door locks behind her, then the other door buzzes open. It can't be open the other way. Because if she's got somebody that piggybacks on her buzz in, and now he has access through the perimeter, we don't have a perimeter. So now they're on the inside, and that's bad, bad, bad. A lot of folks in a hurry don't want to be inconvenienced, but I think it's time because that must work. At least we held our perimeter. So those physical stops is where I'd lean towards that.
Yeah, and I know for our schools K through 12 here in the state of New Mexico, under the direction of the PSFA, that is something that we're starting to really dig off into and install at a lot of our high school and middle schools. Is that additional security barrier where they have to go in and check themselves in the vestibule and it locks behind them.
Yeah.
It is an inconvenience of time, but it is a very, very effective safety barrier. And I think that our schools here in New Mexico are starting to reflect that.
Yeah. And I think personnel, like during the
Right.
hours of drop off and pickup, that's going to be open doors, but people standing there, physically standing there,
Right.
and it takes a commitment. Then once they're in and it closes, now we are going through that Sallyport process, and you are going to buzz in and you should have an appointment and all these things. Because if you're not, all of a sudden that pings that first layer, right? As far as that concentric ring, you got my attention now because you're not supposed to be here. What's going on? And why do you have a backpack? You know, that kind of stuff can start as long as it's the safety culture. You say, this is how this works. If someone comes up to here, so you start developing what normal looks like. When people talk about situational awareness, I go, first, you got to start studying what normal looks like. Then you'll see something that's not normal. Why has that guy been out there in his car for 30 minutes? Right? I don't recognize that car.
Right. Speaking of something that's normal, right? Something that's been on the table that's a bit controversial. And I think they're waiting on individual states to kind of weigh in on this. I know that Texas is one state that's been pushing for this, is to have teachers armed. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't agree with, so immediately when you have that conversation, teachers pipe up and say, I don't want you to make me carry a gun. And I think if you're going to make somebody, it's wrong out the get-go, right? But I've got a guy that works for me. Teachers come to us. We employ many teachers that have a security-minded, this passion for protecting children. And they say, I didn't join this thing. I didn't sign up for that. I'm like, well, none of us signed up for this. Like people coming and killing our kids and all that stuff, but it is everybody's job to protect children to the best of their ability. Now, maybe that's not with a gun, right? I think that the guy working for me is 6'5", just got back from Afghanistan, and he's a teacher, and he's a young guy, and he's a physical guy. I wouldn't rule him out. I'd say if he's up for it and he can pass, again, can you show me? If we teach you and you can do the standard, absolutely carry a firearm, right? Because now it's a collateral duty. Because some of these, it's $90,000 for an SRO here, and that's sometimes he's here. And the other thing, if the police have an emergency, they can pull their SRO. It's like, wait, an emergency, I need him. So if there's some kind of emergency in this town, you're going to pull my police officer. That's not a good deal, right? So to have somebody there that already works there, and maybe it's a compensated thing where you pay for their ammunition and their training and all that, and maybe there's a little bonus for being on a safety team. That's a good deal. That also does this. It gives this dignity of, man, I'm also here to protect these kids, right? So it's a win all the way around as long as it's the right person, right? So to invest in those people, find out who those protectors are, meaning not the person who talks about it and wants a free good deal and he'd be hiding under this table. That's not your guy. That person, that individual that would fight for children and lose their life with or without a gun, that's your person. But that just gives you another capability that lives on this property. That means in seconds, that person's going to be there. And not the kid. If teachers are in charge of children, there's 20 children behind them, they're not the person that should leave the classroom and go either. Who are those administrators potentially, or teachers that don't have kids here? So those are the people that are going to go neutralize a threat. Everybody else should potentially be in a lockdown status to protect their own children while somebody is heading towards neutralizing the threat, meaning that somebody should be coming, right? On my kid's school, somebody is coming. If the police don't show up, somebody is coming.
So I have a question for you. Uvalde is huge on everybody's mind, obviously. I don't even know how to ask this, but I'm kind of curious. There's a class action suit against the police department there.
Yep.
I'm kind of curious as to your thoughts on that. I mean, did they really not respond the way they were supposed to? I mean, were they not trained properly? What kind of training are the upper forces, police forces, and all that kind of getting for all of this? Because it's becoming more and more rampant.
Yeah.
And I'm sure some of these smaller schools, they don't have the resources.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious as to what your thoughts are on that.
It's, to put it bluntly, they were not trained properly. And how do I know that? Because I talked to them. Like I sat in the room with them and they said, we're not trained for this. I said, I know you're not, because I saw the video. Like it's the video. It's just the truth. Like that video recorded what happened, and what happened was not done correctly, right? There's again, best practices. Well, best practices, who's saying best practices? And we're absolutely respectful of law enforcement, but a lot of law enforcement, there becomes a job and it becomes a rice bowl. And I'm the training guy, and the training is what I say it is. Well, man, you haven't looked over the fence at what the SEAL teams are doing or what these other people, just a basic room entry on how you respond, like asking permission to engage a threat that's walking towards the school outside at a range that is clearly within the capability of the AR that you were issued and you trained with, but asking permission to engage a threat that just shot at people, just murdered someone, shot at people, and he's walking towards a school. There should not be a question, right? But I think with COVID, not to get political, but I think we've been trained to like, hey, do I have permission to go outside? Do I have permission to do this? Do I have permission to do that? And now it's bled into law enforcement. Do I have permission to do my job? And he asks so many times, it's too late now because now he's in the school. That whole thing could have been prevented, right? So I think it is a training problem. And I think that there's something to that because everybody I know, it's just dishonorable to try to defend that, right? And the lead law enforcement individual in Texas said, we messed up. And he's right. And it's time to get to it and fix it.
One of the things that we also notice is at the high school level, 9th through 12th grade, we're noticing kind of at, individual security departments formed of ex-Leo, right? When you look at the model of an Uvalde, which is an elementary school, and if you're familiar with school districts, a lot of districts don't have that level of security with the K through 6 or 8th grade, right? Or in our state, K through 6 and 6th to 8th, right? Do you think that there will be a trend of that level of security trickling down to the middle school and elementary school levels as well?
Absolutely.
As a result?
Yes, because they're easier targets. Just to put it bluntly, they're easier targets.
Right.
Small kids can't run fast. You know what I mean? In the older ages, it's likely a student. And that's coming, by the way. So I'm not a naysayer or doomsday or anything like that. This is just getting started because we've made some decisions in our society and those decisions have consequences. So this is coming. And I don't like saying that because I have children in school age. They're going into it. My 4-year-old's not in school yet. So I'm in this for a while. And even if I wasn't, this is my job. This is what I do, right? So I'll be doing this for the rest of my life. But it's coming because the trend is going that way. So the older kids, the problem will likely be one of the students, and the younger kids, the side of evil has figured out that little kids are easier targets. Your numbers will be higher with smaller children, and they need to be defended. And it's our job to do it because we're adults.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jimmy. Any other questions for Jimmy? I want to be respectful of everyone's time. It's 9:03.
No, I just want to say thank you. That was very enlightening. I don't work at a school, but I'm a parent and that mama bear thing. So thank you very, very much.
Very welcome. Guys, let us know if we can be of assistance. This is what we do, and we'll keep doing it. So thank you very much.